Hello, Nelly here, and this is Build Your Army with buildyourarmy.com. And I have Daniela Liscio, a close friend and business partner with Some Ventures, who is the author of How Not to Get Screwed by Your Lawyer. Daniela, welcome. Thanks for being
Thank
here.
you. Thanks for having me. Always fun to talk to you.
Yes. We're going to get into some stuff here today. First off,
Excellent.
how do we find your book?
Well, if people want to, I think the best way is just actually go to hownottogetScrewedbyyourlawyer.com. You can get the introduction in chapter one for free. So just put in your email address and I will send it to you and you can figure out if you like it. And if you love the book, then you can just buy it. I have a link available to people, or you can just go to Amazon and check How Not to Get Screwed by Your Lawyer. I will come up, Daniela Liscio, and people can check it out.
Awesome. And that spelling of Liscio is Liscio for the dyslexics of us here.
Well,
Can't
it's
find
not an
that.
easy name to, yeah. But they don't even have to remember that. Just remember how not to get screwed by your lawyer.
Which is
Super easy.
a fantastically creative title for a book. And I'm sure anybody who's hired a lawyer, that title will resonate with them because I think lawyers are always just trying to drag out their hourly rate. What do you feel about that? Is that why you wrote the book?
Yeah. So here's a joke though, before we even get there. How not to get screwed by, so a colleague, I literally, this was a very quick thinking colleague who I said the title, How Not to Get Screwed by Your Lawyer. And he said, unless they're really good looking.
Well, there you go. So, is that breaking any kind of
Yes.
yeah, okay. I don't know what the guidelines are, but I know therapists can't sleep with their clients, so I figured
No,
lawyers
no,
can.
no. Definitely frowned upon. Yeah,
Is
no.
some ethics,
Completely
or
unethical.
is it an oath that they take? Is that what it is?
Well, it's not included in the oath that lawyers would take at the time of whatever their bar admissions are, different states, it's
Okay.
slightly different. However, I mean, no, so it doesn't actually, I will not sleep with clients is definitely not in the formal articulation of the rules. But it is, I mean, certainly, it's actually a good question. I'm trying to think back to the rules of professional conduct. Um, I think the pertinent language is more about conflicts of interest created. So you definitely, I mean, it's most certainly encapsulated in the broader realm of conflicts. But I don't.
It
What I was
must.
thinking about is, gee, is the language in there somewhere? And it probably is in not in necessarily the rules themselves, but there's always commentary to the rules. And I mean, I'm sure it shows up somewhere, but regardless, you shouldn't need a rule to tell you that you should not be sleeping with your clients.
That's fair. I'm sure it was in an ethics course somewhere in the they had to have
like
come up
I,
in conversation somewhere.
yeah, like some you sort of think, do I really need someone to tell me that? But in the world of craziness, yes, we absolutely should be
Right.
reminding lawyers that yeah,
Yeah.
we should not engage in that behavior.
Yeah. That's fair.
Not that it doesn't happen, but
Yeah, you just don't tell anybody you've done it, I guess.
I guess.
What did inspire you to write this book? Because there is a one part of it that you talked about that quite resonated with me, and that fits with a lot of different industries. And I'll go into what that was. It was like there's no incentive for lawyers to fix the system, so why would you, type of thing. And that resonated with me with a lot of industries, real estate, for example, with the dual representation. It's kind of like a conflict there, but nobody in their right mind was going to push to fix that on their own because they're going to double dip on their commission. So real estate agents loved the dual representation, even though they're the ones
Hmm.
who win out, until like regulations got involved, in Canada specifically anyways. That was continuing to happen, and I think now you can't, but it needed the government to kind of step in to fix that part of the system, even though I'm not a big regulatory guy. But was that one of the reasons you were inspired to write the book, or what was it specifically?
No, I can tell you specifically, although that's a very good point. And yes, as you know, I made the point in the book. Here's what made me want to write this book and call it as I did. Title it as I did. when I left law, I was, first of all, I was in the, in the world of big corporate law. So I did a lot of deal work, and clients were primarily big corporations. And so when you're dealing with that kind of clientele, they have in-house counsel, they have general counsel, they have entire legal teams often working with, on a deal or whatever with the lawyers. So when I left to start my own business, I realized I was now in a position to meet smaller business owners, entrepreneurs, people who are working, kind of like, as you're wearing like multiple hats. You're not just the owner and founder of a business. You're now also, like the chief marketer, you're the operations manager, you're doing everything. You might have a small team, like 1 to 10 employees, but you're still generally wearing a lot more hats. And frankly, even with even a slightly larger team, there often is not, there's not capacity for an in-house counsel, for example, or, someone like that. So you're having to manage the legal process. And it's impossible to get through business without having some legal issue, right? You're going to need a lawyer at some
For
point.
sure.
So I'm now in this position of meeting entrepreneurs and small business and realizing how many of them were were having so many problems with their own lawyer, not the other side, not someone that was suing them or they were suing. Obviously, those are issues, but struggling with the relationship with their attorneys. And what I also was realizing at the same time was that there was this complacency. So, hugely successful people, very successful business owners, very profitable business owners, very sophisticated users of legal services, still were kind of taking this position of, okay, I'm hiring my lawyer to deal with this. I don't want to deal with it. And I realized, look, there are some things that the business owner needs to do to improve that relationship and take a little bit of ownership over that so that they don't throw money down the drain. Because ultimately, that is exactly what is happening. When business owners, entrepreneurs are taking this perspective, taking this approach, and I get it. You're busy doing your own business, running your own life. You hire people for the very reason that you don't want to manage this whole thing. That's just not the right way to enter the relationship. With a few simple, easy tweaks, which I explain in the book, people can approach that relationship with a different mindset and with a much clearer system and process in place to make sure that they don't throw money at their lawyer. Because essentially, what we're doing is literally, here, lawyer, take even more money. Like, everyone's mad about their legal bills. Well, we have a responsibility to our own business, frankly, right? To ourselves to say, wait a second, there's a few things that I can do differently to make sure I don't throw money down the toilet. And I also, in the process, save myself a lot of stress and potentially even, kind of tweak the direction of your legal matter a little better so that you end up in the place that you want to end up.
So what you're talking about essentially is taking ownership of that relationship between you and the lawyer so
Yeah.
that your interests are protected and not getting screwed by your lawyer, which
Right.
was interesting because I believe it was an analogy you wrote about. I think it was sports with the coach
Uh-huh.
and player, which, like, before reading that section of that book, I thought, you hire the expert, they do their thing, they lead the direction or the path,
Sure.
which is completely wrong. And your book kind of highlighted that you can kind of lead the lawyer in the kind of direction you want them to go into, or what is a win for you. And I find in corporate life, um, when I'm working with the corporate lawyers, they'll always come back and say, well, that's a business decision, that's not a legal decision. And I'm like, but you're here to direct that. But when reading your book, especially as an entrepreneur, it's my decision on where I want that case to go. Would that be accurate?
Well, and it's not that it's totally irrelevant. Absolutely, you are hiring the expert. So you need to take guidance and direction from your lawyer. Absolutely, we're not saying that you're going to step all over your lawyer's toes and think
Right.
you're going to be the lawyer. That's not what we're saying. But but to your point, what we are definitely distinguishing is, yes, I actually can make a decision about the strategic direction. Let me give you an easy example, because I think people struggle with this. It's like, well, yeah, but I need the lawyer to. Yes, the lawyer is going to tell you, hey, there is no point to litigating this because the chances of you winning are low or whatever. But ultimately, a lawyer will come back and say, yes, but it's still a business. A lawyer is never going to tell you to definitely take this road or definitely not
Right.
take that road. And that's what you're saying. That's kind of the frustrating thing, because
Right.
they are not going to answer that question. And that reflects the one of the challenging aspects of the law, which is there are no easy answers. It's not as easy as saying, okay, this is a black and white answer for you. As we know, much in life is just not, it's not black and white. So that's why a lawyer is always going to let the final decision to you. But what we want to do from the start, so here would be an example. Let's say you are your business is you have an issue with a, I don't know, let's just pick something. Let's say you've got an issue with a supplier. Supplier has slightly changed the terms, not necessarily worth kind of going to litigation over. But on the other hand, let's say that you want to establish yourself as someone that no one can screw with. It's you've got there's an interest in your industry and in your positioning in that industry to make it clear to all other suppliers that you work with that you are not going to allow yourself to be screwed in this way. And that's just for, again, lots of business reasons. That's what, in that case, a lawyer may be saying, look, you don't really have a good shot. And you say, it doesn't matter. In this case, we are going the distance because it is important to establish myself as this person that you are not going to take advantage of. Because if I don't, then I have these other potential business risks down the road and I don't want them. Alternatively, that might be a situation where you do the opposite, where you lay back and say, you know what, this one is not worth fighting over. As much like people see that as, okay, well, that's the lawyer. No, it's not. Just as you said, just as you've been told, the lawyer saying to you, it's a business decision. I, as a
Right.
lawyer, said that to many clients,
Right.
right? Your job as the lawyer is not to make the decision for them, as for your clients. Your job is to articulate the risks as best you can so that they are in the best position to make that decision. So when you are heading into something, people say, well, obviously, I know that. Well, this is what I like to challenge people with, because as much as we say, well, I already know that, people are not doing it. We don't
Right.
do what we often know. Just
Right.
like, I use the example in the book also. Well, you're probably supposed to drink more water and, lay off the crappy food, but
Yeah.
you still do it, right? You still do
Right.
it. So that's just human nature. We all know we should be doing this, but we don't do the things. And that's why this is what was so fascinating and ultimately led me to write this book, is because I initially was thinking, okay, this is really just going to be for people who've never used a lawyer. They, just need a bit of guidance. And I quickly realized, no, this is essential for people who know what they're doing. It's important for everybody who's approaching, getting into a legal relationship of some kind. But I was meeting just unbelievably successful, profitable business owners who were not doing the thing with their lawyers that they do in business every day. So they might be negotiating masters, they might be doing deals left, right, and center, super like nothing intimidating about these people. And yet even they were saying to me, yeah, sometimes I get intimidated, or you know what, I just feel like I'm being the word that come, I feel like I'm being violated. I mean, literally, these are words that came up in my conversations, and I'm like,
By their
what is
own lawyer?
happening? Yeah, by their
By their
own
own lawyer.
lawyer. And it's like, why is this happening? And so a lot of people will come back and say, well, it's not all lawyers that are bad. That's not what I'm saying. I
Right.
never make the argument that all lawyers are bad. That is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the industry has systemic issues, just like you highlighted with the real estate industry at one time. There are systemic issues that make it very challenging for clients to maneuver through. And lawyers, unfortunately, don't do anything because they are not incentivized. You can say just because they're not incentivized, they're going to do the right thing. That's nonsense. We have complicated laws that people can't even understand. We have an entire system that is so bloated, so bureaucratic that people can't get done what they need to get done without years of delays and so on. Especially this was even before the pandemic, let alone after the pandemic.
Right.
So lawyers cannot possibly say that yes, we're making the system smoother. No, they are not. They are involved, and I make this point in the book. They are involved in every single aspect of our lives, whether it's policy making, whether it's legal drafting. Like people who are actually drafting laws, whether it's judges themselves, the judiciary,
Yeah.
all these aspects where people have all kinds of conflicts, really, right, quite ironic when we think about it. There's all kinds of conflicts involved in maintaining a system that does not work for the users of that system, the clients. Frankly, not a whole lot different than the political system. Would anybody really argue that politicians are really acting in the best interests of the public? That is
No.
nonsense. And similarly, so as a whole, it doesn't mean that all politicians are bad people, although maybe we can make that argument. But I'm not, it's not that lawyers themselves are bad people. They are just cogs in a difficult, complicated, challenging wheel
Right.
that they do not make any better. So it's up to clients to start saying, wait a second, we need to take back a little bit of control. And that's what the book is a blueprint for taking back some of that control.
So do you find clients typically take either a backseat or subservient role to the lawyer? And
Oh, 100%.
this book is about leveling that playing field or that hierarchy
Yes.
between client and lawyer.
Yes, because right now we put lawyers like up here on a pedestal,
Right.
and it's like the clients are down here.
Yeah.
That's insane.
And it's like you're
Like we
saying,
should be like, like
right.
clients should be kind of on the pedestal or at least equal. Like they're the ones paying the bill, and this equation is nonsense. It's insane that we have accepted it that way.
It's
So
like you were saying, like brilliant entrepreneurs negotiating big deals and stuff, but then when it comes to their lawyer, they don't treat it the same way.
that's exactly right. Exactly. And I explain there's different reasons why that happens.
Okay.
And in general, it's the very point that we started with is that you're hiring the expert to
Right.
manage that. You need the expertise, and lots of different things happen when we do that. So that's what's actually quite interesting is this book is not it's not necessarily only the blueprint for dealing with your lawyer. Frankly, it's easily translatable into any professional services relationship. So whether it's your financial advisor, whether it's an accountant, whether it's whoever, right? It creates a bit of a system that's super easy. Anybody can kind of put in place to make sure that we're a bit more careful in that context, so that we don't take such a subservient role.
Right. So ideally, your ideal reader would be an entrepreneur, small or medium sized business type of thing, or somebody leading a big corporation, even.
Well, frankly, this is what's interesting actually is a lot of the complaints so the answer is yes,
Okay.
small business owner, entrepreneur, um, because those tend to be the ones without uh, the
Legal counsel.
support. However, that said, the reality is uh, a lot of the complaints that small and medium businesses have are the exact same as the big guys' complaints, which is
Yeah.
very interesting when you think about it. And so again, it's still why like we have this disequilibrium, and there's lots of opportunity for pretty much anyone using a lawyer, certainly in the business world, to level up that field a little bit and just simply protect themselves a little bit.
And so a reader would benefit from somebody who's currently working with a lawyer, someone who's about to hire a lawyer, or someone who worked with a lawyer in the past, and might be in a situation where they need to hire another lawyer again. So it's almost like the before, current, and after would all apply to this book.
Absolutely. And frankly, a colleague had liked the book so much and passed it on to a family member. And the family member reached out to me and said, this book reinvigorated my soul, because he was starting to feel a little bit like, and what he meant by that is, I make the case in a more subtle way in the book about how important small business is to our
Right.
community. And I think during the pandemic, we allowed ourselves to feel less important. I think it's disgraceful that we simply, I mean, people like me and you were talking about this the entire time,
Right.
but it was disgraceful that we allowed, the Walmarts of the world and, Lowe's to stay open, and we shut down small business for
Yeah.
some, bullshit distortion of public policy. That was ludicrous that we allowed that to happen.
It,
Disgusting. And every business owner who is not fighting against that should be reflecting and saying, why did I allow myself for that to happen? Because everybody in business knows, no matter what BlackRock wants to say or whatever soapbox we're going to allow, to speak more loudly, business has never just been about profit and the bottom line. That is insane. I went to business school 20 years ago. Nobody thinks that. They may say that, oh, we've got to somehow, create more social good. Absolutely. But let me ask you a question. I ask those people who say that, who do we ever look to find a cure for cancer, or to solve environmental problems, or to put people in space? Who do we rely on? The government? Never. It is never the government who is coming up with that solution. It
right.
is always private industry, private business that solves every big problem that humans face. So when I say it is imperative that we protect business, it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with everything that has allowed us to live longer and better lives. So when we take that into account and we face that reality, and we're not, like trying to be, I don't know, whatever, we're getting sucked into whatever stupid thing some Hollywood idiot wants to talk about, or some politician wants to say to, pretend they're doing good for the world. There's nothing about any of that that is compassionate. There's nothing about any of it that is good. What we should be saying is, how do we support small business? Because even Amazon, and even Amazon and whatever, Google had to start in a garage. You
Right.
don't know what that next stage is for business. So in many ways, this book was about wanting small business to think bigger. That is, I think, something that we should hang on to, that is worth fighting for. And yes, it's a micro niche kind of theory. It's in dealing with our lawyers. How do we think bigger with respect to, thinking about or dealing with our lawyers? But the bigger component of that is that it fits into a model that creates more resilient business, and also just business that is willing to, like I said, think bigger.
That's beautiful, and it fits right in with your the workshops that you do from time to time with Business Armor Live that I've sat in on a few times. And I mean, nobody can talk for 4 hours like you, and it feel like it's a 10-minute thing. Like, I
Wow.
mean,
Well, thank
the
you.
the amount of value you bring to those workshops is phenomenal, and it is about uh, armor and layers to your business, layers of resilience to having a business and being an entrepreneur, to not allow government to intrude and shut down your business, not like roll over when things like that happen, not let outside forces influence your business. And that fits right into with how not to get screwed by your lawyer too. I think those two are a great marriage together, because it's another piece of armor with a business.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for that. And that's exactly right. That's the, that's the idea is I just want us all to be thinking, okay, we may be running small business. That doesn't mean that we should be, like sort of, I can't believe how many business I just, in fact, I was, recently traveling and I met some other business owners from Canada, from our native country, where, I was like, well, yeah, but we had no choice. It was the government telling us. And I said, wait a
Bullshit.
second, that is not how it works. We lead the change.
That's
So I
right.
said, the reality was in the US, we had the exact same restrictions in place. But at some point, enough people were saying, no, I am not complying with something that is not, this is not good. There are other consequences to this. I'm not going to let somebody lie about, this narrowly construed consequence, when public policy is intended to be looking at all of the factors. And yes, there's going to be some losers and winners, but we've got to do a better job of, taking the full landscape, a more holistic approach, and saying, we are not going to uh, comply with these ridiculous rules. I'm not saying, go out and break the law. That is not what I'm saying. But in this particular instance, where we had, rules that were frankly, I think ultimately, if they were ever litigated in court, they would be easily kind of, brushed aside. So these were very ad hoc rules, kind of put in place for not any good reason. Frankly, like I said, it makes no sense that certain stores could stay open and others could not. I mean, the whole thing was
Well,
mind-boggling,
to that point,
bogglingly idiotic. But
it proved that it was bogus because
right,
no science would ever say it's okay to go to Walmart and Costco, but not a mom and pop shirt to buy a T-shirt, a
no,
mom and pop
it
store to buy
was
a T-shirt. So it's
right.
it's like if you look at it, there might be hundreds of people in the Walmart and 5 people in a mom and pop store, but those 5 people are in more danger than the 100 people in that other big box store,
Yeah,
which
the whole
proves
thing was so stupid. Yeah,
it just goes to anybody who thought for 3 seconds realize that that was bogus because it can't be about the science if you're selectively allowing certain businesses to be open and they just happen to be the big ones.
right. Right. So without, sort of like burying ourselves in that,
Yeah,
but it's a good lesson to sort of learn to sort of say, I need to make sure that next time something like this happens, I am going to create a business that is more resilient in the face of whatever next comes, like the last thing that, I don't know, I think the WEF just, who's, meeting right now as we're, I try and ignore it because
yeah,
it's like it's almost science fictiony that we
yeah.
have this group of people. We don't really know exactly who's funding them. We don't. And I don't want to get into
And
like
they're
conspiracy
plotting our
stuff, but
future.
no, but they just said, like something about, yeah, we should be expecting a cyber attack of like, grand proportion or however they word it. It's like,
And it's probably the
well,
Russians
gee,
too,
that's,
right?
yeah,
Is it?
exactly. So my point is, we should always expect problems.
Sure.
Problems happen. It is not. This is not. It's not a conspiracy theory to believe that there's going to be something that's likely to happen. I don't know what it is. I have no idea. All I know is that if we look back at history, and I talked about this in some of the workshops that we did, we like to think, oh my God, things are so terrible. They're so crazy right now. Well, when are they not?
Right.
Walt Disney started, in 1929, he slapped a cartoon mouse on a watch and built this unbelievably, infamous business in the Walt Disney Company. You sort
Incredible.
of think that was literally like at the start of the Great Depression that happened. Who is going to be interested in a cartoon mouse on
Mouse.
a watch? And yet he did. And if you look back at the history of all kinds of companies, whether it's IBM or GE or any number of companies that still are in existence today, you sort of think it is amazing that they had to live through also very challenging times, as we all do. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm not saying like, like some people are just better at it than many of us, but it's the process of learning. How do we create a business that is more flexible, adaptable, and ultimately profitable, so that it gets you through all of those challenging times.
Amazing. Well, Daniela, thank you again for being here. It's how not to get screwed by your lawyer.com to find that book, get that free chapter, but make sure you buy it too, because don't just be a leech here. Daniela's good.
Amazon's actually the hardcovers often. I mean, it's mostly been on sale for like as cheap as the paperback, so people
Perfect.
can look for it. Yeah.
Thank you. So again, how not to get screwed by your lawyer.com with Daniela Liscio. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Take care.